Let's see.
And oh wait, no, I don't have the notification yet.
There we are. All right, we've been live. I hate those delays. Welcome back to the Existentialists. My name is Tony B. With me is my partner Miguel, and we have a special guest today, Mr. Edwin Robles. Hello, Edwin. Hello, Miguel. All right. Love the introductions. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching the Existentialists, that means you are a subscriber to us on YouTube. Please share this video and make sure it becomes available to everyone. We're going to have a tough conversation on what just happened today. If you are unaware, it's all over social media, all over the mainstream news outlets. DC, the Capitol, has been stormed by Trump supporters earlier today. As of right now, I believe the Capitol is cleared. The National Guard finally came in. The police finally made arrests. It took a long time. Now, the conversation that I really wanted to have today is the fact that these individuals, Trump supporters, they were being sold the idea that the vote for presidency was fixed, it was stolen, it was a fraud. Therefore, as Americans, they had the right to demand that this election be overturned. And that got out of hand. Damage was done on the Capitol property. I saw fire extinguishers set off inside the Capitol. There was a tussle with the police. Police used pepper spray. But it was a very weak response from the police. So there's a lot of anger that the BLM protests over the summer were treated as if they were criminals of the state. But when it came to these white supremacists, these Trump supporters, these right-wingers, they were treated like allies and they were given the kid gloves. There's a lot of anger on that. I want to see where you guys are. What was your first initial response? I want to start with my partner, Miguel. Let's look
at the images. That's, I think, what we want to look at first. Just so people, again, I know we've seen them. I am currently going to share with you guys really quickly this video from, it is from CNBC. Here, let me restart it. Hopefully you guys should be able to hear it. Can you hear anything?
I can hear it, yeah.
Okay, because I can't hear anything.
We'll pause.
Protesters are in the building.
Thank you.
There wasn't anything to say.
We were just told that there has been tear gas in the rotunda, and we're being instructed to each of us get gas masks that are under our seats.
Okay, perfect, cool. So just a little bit story. What happened is the House and the Senate, they were certifying the Electoral College results for Biden when Trump finished the speech to his base, his supporters out in front of the Capitol. And then the mob, I will call them a mob, the terroristic mob, the cult, you may not like that language, Tony, that's fine. I don't care.
Like
Descended onto the Capitol building looking for the senators and for the House of Representatives. And they made it through the Capitol Police. They made it through, I think, 4 layers of security, broke windows, opened doors, jammed themselves in there. By the way, Tony, change your name. You're not Miguel Gomez. Please change your name. And senators and House of Representatives were told to basically quarantine or find shelter in place wherever they could, because now you had people from the outside, people who were not vetted, people who hadn't gone through security protocols, now inside of the Capitol building, and that posed a safety risk and hazard to everyone. So when I saw that, I just immediately started looking at the statutes, and I'll share that in a little bit. But just my reaction is, what the hell is going on? And it's something I had never seen before. I never thought we would ever see. So that's just my reaction. What about you, Edwin?
You'll hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, it was weird, right? I was busy around that time, and I come out and I'm looking at my phone, and right away I'm seeing this news on Facebook, like that there's someone in the middle of the of the Senate floor, chanting or whatever. That's like my first thing. I'm like, what is going on? Because I haven't been looking at my phone for some time. But I have to agree with Miguel on this, and Tony and I got into it a little bit on Facebook. What happened today cannot be in any way similar or even connected to that of the behavior of the BLM protest. This isn't something that like people were, people decided to gather. There's so many things about this situation today that we can go into later on. But my current stance, and as I'm watching right now, the Senate floor kind of like go into the vote now. It's what happened today isn't about freedom of speech. It wasn't about protecting that. Today, what we saw was a mini coup. It wasn't what and I'm ready to hear what Tony has to say. Right, I'm really excited to hear what Tony has to say because I hear he has some interesting opinions, but. What today happened was un-American, was everything that America wasn't about. Today it was planned, right? Donald Trump has been rallying his troops for months on end, and today we saw all his words of white supremacy, all this stuff finally take to fruition, and it's very disappointing. But it's whatever. I mean, hopefully we can move on from this. Hopefully it was just a bump, but who knows, right? These people were mobilized. These people broke into our capital, right? That's not like breaking into the whole Area 51 stuff that people were talking about last year. This is our capital. This is supposed to be our base, and like our own people broke into it. So it's a tough situation. I'm clearly against what happened today, but I'm more excited to see what everyone else has to say and how we talk about it.
Miguel, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Edwin. Can you amend that when you said our people?
Our people? What do you mean?
Our people. He's saying don't include yourself with those people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I don't include myself. Or wait.
Oh.
Can you clarify the statement that I said?
He's saying you said our people. Our people didn't commit to the terrorism today in DC. Our people are shaming that behavior.
Oh, Tony, so you agree it's terrorism?
I'm speaking like I'm Miguel
okay.
right now.
All right. Yeah, no. Well, no, it's frustrating, right? Because I see myself as an American. I'm pretty sure those people see themselves as an American, and sometimes your people, they do things you're not happy with, and it sucks because I'm looking at it as objectively as I can, right? Because I have a lot of Republican friends, and I have some Republican friends who are saying, well, no, if BLM can do that, then why can't we? And they were trying to justify everything they were doing. I'm trying to look at it objectively, but I guess I'm too connected to my political ideology to allow, or even just not even my political ideology. I'm too connected to my understanding of how the world works to allow for things like that to be like remotely acceptable. These are 40, 50-year-old men, at BLM, we're trying to excuse them, right? Those are 21-year-olds, 25-year-olds, right? And I'm not saying what, the looting was okay or it wasn't okay, right? That's a different situation in itself. But what we saw today was 40-year-old men who bought plane tickets, right? We're talking about 50-year-old men who with whole ass beards going into a place, our nation's capital, and acting like you would expect hooligans to act, right? So that's just a way of looking at it.
I honestly think that the whole BLM argument that conservatives bring up is just another whataboutism. It's a non sequitur. It's a red herring. It has nothing to do with what happened today. And to try to justify what happened today, which was, Tony, trespassing, property damage of federal property, it cannot be compared to BLM. Now, was there property damage in yeah, of course, there was too, but none of it happened in Washington, D.C. on federal property. By federal property, I mean the Capitol. the
Did
Capitol.
you
That
forget about
just
assault though? Trump supporters assaulted people too. Did you say that?
Someone got shot today. I think
Yeah,
someone.
a Trump supporter got shot by Secret Service apparently.
no
I
Secret Service
have
wasn't. It was Capitol Police. Secret
or
Service wasn't
Capitol
even there
Police.
yet.
Sorry. Yes. Let me reference what Miguel's talking about.
Quick question: do you have the video of the shooting?
No, but I had. Great.
Like,
The moment you
it's-
think you have something, you don't have it anymore.
Now, I want to come back because I think, Edwin, and that's completely fine. You're implicating Trump more so than I am, because at the end of the day, he has stoked all these fears for so long and all this hatred. What really pushes it over for me, in that I really want to blame Trump, is this this news that's coming out of the New York Times. Let me share it really quickly.
Uh-oh.
And so there were repeated requests by the mayor of DC to call the National Guard in and disperse these rioters and these protesters, if you want to call them that. And the first initial requests were denied. And then finally, the request was approved, but it wasn't approved, according to the New York Times and sources. It wasn't by President Trump, but by Vice President Mike Pence. Mike Pence actually okayed for the National Guard to go in, not Trump. That for me, that pushes it off. That just pushes it. That for me pushes it over the edge. That Trump, he sees what happens today in Washington D.C. and if he revels in it, if he's happy, or he just doesn't give a shit. I mean, yeah, this guy's just pure evil.
Yeah, so I want to go and take a moment back just to show everyone the woman was shot, and this is someone that supposedly witnessed it. This is a Trump supporter. This is from Twitter. The news was interviewing him. So let's just look at that really quick. This is what we're talking about. This young individual.
I can't hear it.
I mean, neither. Tony, did you share it? You share the sound?
Could you just let us know what he says?
Yeah. I did. Let me just make sure. I shared it that way.
Can you show us
Do you
your
hear it
hand?
now?
Yeah.
How did you get that on
Good.
your hand?
Well, we
Yeah,
had
come on, guys, you gotta say it sooner.
the chambers inside, and there was
Alright.
a young lady who rushed through the windows. A number of police and Secret Service were saying, "Get back, get down, get out of the way." She didn't heed the call, and as we kind of raced up to grab people and pull them back, they shot her in the neck, and she fell back on me and started saying she was fine, it's cool. And then she started kind of like moving weird, and blood was coming out of her mouth and neck and nose, and I don't know if she's alive or dead anymore.
And how did you get back out of the building?
Riot police came in and started.
Where are you from?
Yeah, I'm
All
Tom.
right, that's pretty much his claim. She was pretty much with the Trump supporters. They with the storming of the Capitol, and so he says Secret Service. I believe Miguel has corrected the statement. It was more likely Capitol Police. So that's terrible, But the call of terrorists means that guess what? You should lack empathy for terrorists. They don't deserve the same rights. They're terrorists. So I believe in some people's perspectives that woman got what she deserved because she's terrorizing the United States. I'm not trying to strawman anyone's arguments, but that's how terrorists are treated. So I caution people, be careful on using such words when you talk about your political opponents, because terrorism as a label dehumanizes individuals. They lose all sense of global dignity, international rights. They become the devil of all devils, and therefore bombing their children becomes acceptable. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's dangerous. I don't like it. So that's where I am already. The use of terrorism worries me. That's one. And I want to stick on that one because I can go on. You guys said a bunch of things. I want to go into the comparison of Black Lives Matter because there is something there. There's not a comparison where it needs to be next to each other, but there is some variation, some nuance to be discussed. And to dismiss it It shows a hypocrisy on the left. And I'm a leftist. I understand this because I'm consistent with what I'm saying. I've been saying all summer that the violence is a dangerous precedent that we are allowing to happen. The more violent and aggressive position or side, they will ultimately cause more harm. And we've seen that when Trump supporters clash with Antifa, clash with Black Lives Matter. We see that stuff. The Trump supporters are more violent, and it ends up with people being more hurt on the left. But let's talk about this word terrorism, because Miguel, I agree. Oh no, I forgot who said it. Someone said cult. Yes, it's a cult mentality. But terrorism, I think that's worth discussing on why it should not be terrorism.
I mean, I just don't know, Tony. When I see something like this, I really can't help but call them terrorists.
What happened to you?
I got maced.
You got maced.
Left, please.
And what happened? You were trying to go inside the
Yeah,
Capitol?
I made it like a foot inside, and they pushed me out, and they maced me.
What's your name? Where are you from?
My name is Elizabeth. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee.
And why did you want to go in?
We're storming the Capitol. It's a revolution.
I do want to give my credit where it's due. That's from Yahoo News. TikTok, I saw it from their TikTok, but it's on private, so no one else can see it. Tony, when they're openly and seditiously trying to stage a revolution, it's a coup, man. It's treason. It's no longer there is no other word to give these people but terrorists for their political ends.
I 100% agree with Miguel. You know, she said she traveled from Knoxville, Tennessee, right? So this was planned, right? A terrorist attack. And I don't want to go into technicalities within the word of what constitutes a terrorist attack or what's not, but this was a planned thing, right? Where those protests we saw that you're trying to compare it to, the BLM protest, that happened in the spur of the moment, right? No one was planning on going out and knocking out, and chanting Black Lives Matter, right? This wasn't part of the agenda that day. But when George Floyd died, people were upset. People were furious at the fact that, and I hate the fact that it's come to this. It's come to the point that we're comparing the death of innocent Black people by the hands of police and armed vigilantes and other white supremacists, like we saw with the Georgia, I think it was, or the Alabama, where the man was chased, right, by these two guys.
Robbery.
Yeah, exactly, that situation. We're comparing those outbursts of human revolt, right? I like to consider that's human revolt. That is human anger, in a becoming a reality, right? To that of a person who has for months now delegitimizing our democracy, right? Has been for months saying that this election is rigged because of the mail-in ballots, right? That there's a bunch of illegals voting. And I don't believe in that term, but that is the words that he uses, that there is a bunch of voter fraud, right? For months, he's making his base believe that. So these people are already being like, okay, all right. So he's saying that there's going to be some funny stuff this election. The night of the election, he ends up losing on the same things that he's been preaching on. Judges all across the country have said, no, there was no voter fraud, or there was none of that. So now he's riling his base again, saying this and that. And then finally, he's basically threatening Mike Pence on a national stage, saying, he better do what's right. I like the guy, but I can like him a lot less if, whatever. So he's encouraging this behavior from people all over the country. So when someone goes from Knoxville, Tennessee, to the Capitol, and I'm not talking about a young person, right? Because there's, like you said, there's similarities, but there's clear differences. We saw a lot of youth out there at these protests. There's people of all ages in terms of the BLM stuff, but we saw a lot of youth because the youth are tired of the establishment. Here we saw 40, 50-year-old men wearing like pro-Auschwitz shirts. I don't know if you saw that. I'm sure you saw some of those pictures, going in there and saying this is a revolution. When you're saying this is a revolution, you're technically going against the government. So therefore you've become an enemy of the state. And therefore I think that would make you a terrorist. If Cicero here, if I decide, I'm going to war with Cicero in terms of I'm going to militarize myself and try to attack them. And then they tear gas me because I'm trying to break into the building and just destroy things. I think I would become a domestic terrorist. That would make me one.
So, you know, I want to take this piece by piece because I don't want to jump too much into Black Lives Matter, like as a complete comparison. You're right. The differences are big enough to where the comparisons don't need to be discussed. I get that. What I'm saying on front, though, if we decided right now as leftists, as a left organizations, they decided, I shared this Twitter post. It's not my idea, but someone said, imagine if the same energy was given to end the unconstitutional wars and to fight for Medicare for all. I can bet that the majority of people on social media right now that are calling the Trump supporters terrorists, that are calling it a coup d'etat, they would back the same people that would take the Capitol if it was for Medicare for all, if it was for ending unconstitutional wars. Those same people would back those causes because they mean a lot to them. It's on their side. It's their issue. So that's why I talk about the hypocrisy. You wouldn't want those individuals to be called terrorists. You just wouldn't. Why would you? Think about it this way. The founding fathers themselves, they could have easily been deemed terrorists by the government, by the king. But the American people wanted those. Miguel, you got to interrupt with your mic on. No one can hear you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that they were declared terrorists. That's why he sent the redcoats over from England to the colonies. They were declared terrorists.
So who are they terrorists to, though? You're
The
using
crown.
the rhetoric.
Yeah, the crown.
Yes, you're using the rhetoric of the ruling class, and therefore you are aligning yourself with the ruling class as preferred to align yourself with the people. The people are pissed. And yes, they're wrongfully pissed, but they're still pissed. They've been manipulated. I'm not saying they shouldn't be held accountable. I'm against violence. But that same rhetoric is used by the establishment to dehumanize people, to put them down, to silence their dissent. And that's what's happening all summer long. You had people saying, fuck the police. And those same people are saying, beat the shit out of them. Like, what? Those terrorists, they called you terrorists for destroying property. Yes, you destroyed private businesses. You destroyed public property, not federal, right? Well, some federal, not at the Capitol, though. So that's a good point, Miguel. But they still did these things, and they were called terrorists. And I disagreed with it. Don't call them terrorists. Don't do that. The word revolution, Bernie Sanders used the word political revolution. Is it because he attached political in front of it? Like that woman, she's from Tennessee. I don't want to shit on Tennessee, but do we know what her education level is? Do we know that she had a gun on her and she was willing to actually have a revolution in the sense of the real word? Or should we say revolution like we can take our government back, we can take our country back? We don't know, and we're assuming things, but let me stop because I said a lot. So I don't know where you guys are at, but I just can't. I want accountability, but I don't want to call people terrorists.
I want to add, I think the big difference here, the big difference for me, and sorry if I talk a lot, let me know to shut up.
Run it.
You have, today was a special day in our country, right? Like today, I mean, not saying today wasn't a special day in terms of anything really meaningful, but it was a day that we were going to count the electoral votes. And I think it goes back to Trump's rhetoric for the last couple of months. He's rallying a base to do something against our government and to stop a democratic process. To me, that was what I saw as terrorism. I saw that as disrupting. I don't know. I believe me, I debate myself on this ideology as well, right? I flip from sides from time to time, like the state, right? Do I believe in the state? I believe in protesting, but to an extent, I do believe in the destruction of property. I debate those things with myself all the time. But what I saw was that it was a planned attack to stop the count so that we could not confirm Joe Biden and overthrow our ruling. What I don't want to say the word ruling, but our leader, right? Our democratically elected leader. Yeah, you're right. You know, the word terrorism can be thrown around a lot, and it can lose its value. But I think in this case, this is a clear sign of terrorism. Again, I'll let Miguel talk because I'm trying to find my wording on some of these ideas. But I do get where you're coming from, and I do understand that, you know, if there was a situation where a leftist group would go to the Capitol and say, well, if we're not getting Medicare for all, we're going to overthrow the government, I think I'd be against it. Because the idea of revolution is so cool to some of our youth, but none of us have actually experienced what a real revolution is. No one has experienced the hardships of a revolution. Try working with people from, like, you know, third world countries who've experienced multiple revolutions. You know, the idea of revolution is scary. The idea of real revolution, right? Not political revolution. He's just throwing that word out. Again, these words lose their meaning when they're not accurately used or accurately used. Real revolution is scary, and I don't think that we're in anywhere close to that. I don't think we'd ever see leftists do that, just because our ideology is I don't know. I think the leftists, real leftists, right, groups are above that. And I'm not talking about like the hardcore leftists, extreme leftists. I'm talking about just the general pool of leftists. And same thing with the general pool of the conservatives, right? 71 million voted for Trump. I don't think we saw 71 million people out there today. We probably saw I don't know how many actually. So I don't even want to throw a random number out there, but
Definitely above 100.
Yeah. So
thousands, maybe
thousands, yeah, maybe thousands, 2,000, right? But that's nowhere near the number that came out to vote for him. So it's the small group of people that do see themselves as extremists, that do want to see an overthrow of the government. I don't even think they have an ideology to begin with, right? It's just they see Trump as this god, and they will do whatever they can to protect them. You ask them, like, personally about like what they think about Medicare for all or just these random topics. I've met so many Republicans that like believe in Medicare for all, but love Trump, or, you know, believe in trickle down economics, but vote blue. You know, it's like, it's these people that came today, they don't have that ideology. Besides that, they're white supremacists, they're probably racist, or they have some, you know, deep alt-right ties. Because what did we see today? We saw Adolf Hitler get quoted by an Illinois congressional person. So it's, yeah. So I don't know. Sorry, I'll let someone else go.
I want to let Miguel in on this, but I just have to pose a question to both of you. Okay, so Edwin already addressed if there was leftist causes that no, we wouldn't agree that storming the Capitol and demanding it in such a revolutionary way is a smart decision because it's scary. The implications of that is just terrible. It's terrifying. I get that. I'm with you. I don't want that either. I say just most people, they probably will. And because they will fall in line believing it's a human right kind of mentality. Okay, let's say that legitimately it is true that Biden stole the election from President Donald Trump. Let's just say that's true. I don't think it's true. I think it's a fraudulent claim by a fraudulent president and his fraudulent followers. That third one didn't make too much sense for me. Let's say it was true. Do they have a right? Even let's call them terrorists. Do they have a right to storm the Capitol to overthrow an unjust government? I mean, isn't that what revolutions are about? And so that's why I don't like to call them terrorists, because if they were right, if we were on the right side of history in this, these revolutions, they often overthrow unruly governments, dictatorships, fascist leaders, and they do it for good cause, and they're called terrorists, and they're gunned down like rats, like dogs. That's better. So I just have to pose the question, isn't it just to stand up to a corrupt system if they had the facts on their side? And I believe people would say yes, but because they were wrong and manipulated, there is no compassion or empathy here. So that's what I feel is lacking. The label terrorist, it lacks a point of view of compassion or any empathy. It straight up just says, you know what? Screw you, buddy. You should just play with the game. You lost. Stop being a sore loser. Now you're a terrorist. I think it's irresponsible. Miguel, though, he comes from a legal standpoint. So I really want to see Miguel's expertise be put to use here.
Tony, was there a question in there somewhere? Because I just heard a monologue from you.
I
was-
think his question was his
It was
question
both.
was well, that if they had the facts on their side, would it be justified to call it a revolution and not consider them terrorists to an extent, right?
I think
And
all right.
go ahead. I have something to add on that, but I'll let you go first. But it's a loaded question.
I think there's a better. Now looking at it, I think there's a better question. There's not a better question. There's a better term for it, and it actually carries with it more punch, and it actually is more indicative of what these writers did today. Tony, if you want to play your semantics game, which I think honestly is bullshit, fine. We won't call them terrorism. I'll call them treasonous. I'll call them treason actors who are knowingly taking up arms, breaking in, taking up arms against the United States and levying war. But what I mean by that is when I see shit like this, hold on, let me pull it up. When I see shit like this, like, yeah, buddy, your team lost 150 years ago. Give it up. You are a sore loser. This is the closest. This is the only time the Confederate flag has been within the Capitol building. In the 4 years of the Civil War, the Confederate never made it anywhere close to Washington D.C.
Miguel,
And it has
I'm
to
looking
happen.
at a Movie Edit Pro.
My
Yeah.
bad. Oh, my bad. You guys could have told me this. Jesus,
I
share the wrong
thought
one.
you were gonna play a video from there.
No.
I was excited.
Here, sorry. This I did see it on your face. When I see this, when I see someone with a Confederate flag within the U.S. Capitol in 2021, knowing that the Confederacy died 150, I'm sorry, didn't die, was killed 150 years ago. They're terrorists, yes, but they're also treasonous. They're treasonous, Tony. That I think even carries more weight than terrorism. And you really can't say, oh, these guys are treasonous, but BLM are also treasonous. That really has no comparison. And I'll get to that. When I see pro-Trump writers tearing down the US flag and putting up a Trump flag, I'll even play the video. That is treasonous. That is even worse than terrorism. You know what? Yeah, let's not play the semantic game. Let's forget terrorists. They're treasonous. They are knowingly levying war against the United States. Is it sharing sound? Yeah.
Holy shit.
It's embarrassing.
I mean, Tony, for these first of all, for these writers, these treasonous sons of bitches, we don't know how many more there are, but if it's Trump's base, which is a pretty good chunk of the American population, it's not about the Constitution. It's not about election integrity. It's about getting it's not even about the US. It's about getting their guy in power and staying in power. And that is treasonous. That to me is worse than terrorism. And you cannot extend the word treasonous to BLM. It's just not even factually. It doesn't even factually fit anywhere close.
And I want to add something, Tony. You want to get, what is it that you said? He gets into semantics or whatever about?
Yeah, semantics.
Semantics. The state defines what terrorism is, right? So the state is Iran to Iran. I mean, we're terrorists, right? Or to another country, the definition is so. Again, it depends on who is in power, and they will define what it is, right? I want to go back to what you said about if do I think it's justifiable if the facts were there? If the facts were there, 100%, right? If for some reason there was not a legitimate election, 100%. If there was any sort of real funny business, I'm not talking about maybe there were some extra votes counted here, right? I don't think that we were even close to the number of votes counted for it to even be considered funny business, right? if we were in the like, you know, where people were burning votes and stuff like that, regardless of which side I was on, I do agree with you. There would be a legitimate reason to go out there and be like, no, this is wrong, whatever. But the thing is, the facts aren't really there. And the problem is that I think even Trump knows that. Trump knows that because for not even months, years, he's been delegitimizing our media sources, right? So we can't even trust information. When you can't trust information, you can't really expect people to you know, I like to believe people can educate themselves to some extent, but to some extent, I don't. It's tough, right? When a sort of demagogue is out there delegitimizing all news sources, right? So what is real? What is fact, right? So for the last 4 years, he's been destroying all media outlets in terms of delegitimizing them. And I'm not talking about just like some random guy. I'm talking about one of the most powerful person on the planet. It hurts our democracy. And then Trump has been a terrorist in by some definition for the last 4 to 5 years, maybe even since 2011 when he first ran, challenging Obama or whatever. Yeah, you're right, Tony. If for some reason, like for example, in 2028, I don't even know if that's going to be an election year, AOC is running against, I don't know, like Paul Ryan, or I don't know, I'm just throwing names out there. And Paul Ryan was caught or Paul Ryan's team was caught literally burning a bunch of ballots out that we knew were going to go to AOC, and people decided to storm the Capitol. I think that'd be a totally different story. But the thing is that we have facts, and facts showed us that there was no funny business in the elections. And that is why I get it. But I also, you know, we're in this reality. And what happened today was entirely unacceptable by 50, 40-year-old men.
I'm only laughing because you're really upset about these older men doing the dirty business that the youth should be doing.
Well, it's just like, I hate how they like just try to like picture like the BLM youth into being a bunch of like thugs and hooligans. You know, yes, there was looting, 100%. I'm not going to deny that. People stormed Walgreens, people stormed Gucci, people did all this stuff, right? But you're also talking about young people who have been given a shit economy, who have been given a shitty advantage in this country. And not only that, during a pandemic where the government has not given them shit, that's more reason to actually revolt. So that's actually reason to rise up against your government.
Yeah,
but
yeah, and you're saying something that I can empathize with. I hear you. I hear the protesters. I heard the rioters. I heard them. And I was like, my heart was touched. I was concerned for their safety. I disagree with the tactics, but I heard them and I empathized. And that is missing with these idiots in the Capitol. I'll call them idiots. Idiots is fine with me, but I'm not playing semantics here. What I'm saying is you are using the rhetoric of the establishment, of the powerful, and you are deciding that it is okay to use state violence against them. As far as I'm concerned, yes, that treasonous act of the flag switching, that's serious. But for me too, man, that's a symbolic thing. Like, I don't give a damn. Dude, I'm all about free speech. If you're not hurting people, I don't give a fuck. Say what you want. I'm about that. Now, the guy with the Confederate flag, the sore losers, I call them, they didn't give up for a whole 2 generations or so. Where was his gun, Miguel? I didn't see any real guns. I saw someone violate someone with a fire extinguisher. I seen a video where people were like rushing the police, but they were doing the hands up, don't shoot stuff. And they kept getting closer. The officer kept telling him, stay back. He was alone. But I didn't see the terrorist violence that comes with overthrowing a government. What I saw was theater by people that believed they were just. And that's what the difference, that's the comparison is. Black Lives Matter protesters and other rioters, they thought what they're doing was just. And these people think what they're doing is just. They're hypocrites because they didn't empathize with the BLM. But the moment that they want justice, they want everyone to empathize with them. And guess what? I'm not going to placate to what side is mine and say I agree with that. I'm going to be consistent. And so I don't see the takeover. I don't see the terrorism. I see the damage. I see the assault. I see actual crimes being committed, and people should be held accountable. And I could say BLM is terrorism because, Miguel, what's our definition of terrorism? You remind me a lot.
First of all, let me go back. Never have I ever advocated for institutional force of violence against either BLM or these people. What I am advocating for is accountability. And that's why I look at the statutes. That's what I look at, what sedition is, what treason is, what terrorism is, what property damage to federal property, federal damage property to federal property, and what trespass is. Okay. And if we were to compare the two groups, do I want accountability for the people who loot Walgreens during BLM? Sure, but that's a state issue. Do I want harsher punishments for those people who, as today, stormed, broke windows of the Capitol building, hurt people? Yes, I am okay with that. I am okay with accountability, not institutional force. They shouldn't be shot right then and there at the spot. I'm never advocating for that.
That's what you do to terrorists, though. You shoot them on the spot.
No, you don't.
Terrorists don't get our legal system, dude. Terrorists don't get our legal system. That's why Guantanamo Bay exists. That's why the bombs were dropped on brown children across the world.
Brother, the Supreme Court has ruled that even people in Guantanamo Bay they have the protection of habeas corpus. They cannot be held indefinitely. So terrorists do have rights. I have talked out against the killing of Anwar Awlaki and his son, his 16-year-old son, and his sister. They were all killed without extrajudicial proceedings. I am completely against treating terrorists or treasonous people without that due process, with any extrajudicial violence. There should be accountability, not violence.
Isn't treason punishable by death?
Punishable with due process, my friend. Yes, due process, accountability.
But you're playing judge, jury. You're doing all of it. You're saying they are treasonous, and if they are guilty, therefore they should get shot in the head. Your words. Now we're playing semantics, are we?
I have a question for everyone.
Tony,
I have a question.
go for it.
Because I'm looking at the FBI's definition, right? And I'm looking at it today. I'm not looking at BLM. I'm not looking at anything like that. Terrorism is defined as the unlawful use of force and violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce a government, the civilian population, or any segment thereof in furtherance of political or social objectives, right? So we can agree by that definition, what we saw today was terrorism, right? Maybe? To an extent, Tony?
Only if we agree that the BLM actions.
No, I'm just talking about today. We're just talking about today.
Yes.
So I look, I see this as like, also, this is a little bit more of my patriotic side. They came into our nation's capital, right? And this was for the whole world to see, right? You know, we just had threats from Iran. Sorry, I keep saying it wrong, but we just got threats yesterday or today. It's a national embarrassment what we saw, and for the reasons we saw it too, right? So I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying I advocate for anything like that, but I wouldn't be surprised when you know the rubber bullets were shot would be used against them when they were used all throughout the city of Chicago, right? Now I'm bringing it back to that to a BLM situation, right? I don't know exactly. I don't. It's a hard thing to figure out exactly how we would move forward with it, like the whole due process of it, but. And what we saw today, them breaking into the Capitol, putting staffers, putting elected officials, putting innocent bystanders at risk, all for false, whatever it is, spreading this false information or fighting for this false information, using Hitler rhetoric, using racist rhetoric. I would not be surprised if at one point, if we were actually prepared, right? Because there's another issue that we need to talk about. We would have used force against these individuals who were who broke into our capital, right? And again, it's so crazy that I have to say this, but like, it's our capital. It's not like a government building. It's not like, it's a building that is like, when I remember I went there once, like there's so much security to get inside. These people were walking in there, picking up like random like things that you could not touch if you were just randomly going in there, right? In this situation, it's tough, right? Because I get how you're going to connect BLM. What we saw today was just a complete disrespect of, like, even I feel like we're conservatives are saying this. What we saw today was a complete disrespect of our country, of our country's like democratic process, and more importantly, of our institutions, right? This isn't breaking into a Walgreens. This isn't breaking into a private corporation. This is like the foundational, like, democratic process, or where our democratic process is held. So besides the voting booth, but yeah, it was tough, right? And if I was Iran right now, or any country that hated us, I'd see this as like, wow, look at they're falling apart. And I don't know. It's also like a national security threat. So anyone that did that today, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. And again, I go back to the 40-year-old men. These again are 50-year-old men with, like, who probably raised some racist ass kids, and who are going to continue to try to spread this ideology of hate for the next generations to come. And they're probably going to see themselves as heroes. They're going to see themselves as patriots, as liberators or whatever. But I don't know. It's a tough conversation to have. I like what Miguel's saying. Tony, I get where you're coming from. It's a tough conversation.
I really want to respond to that. I know. I really want to respond to that comment, the comment that we got on the live stream. It's not known that it's an Antifa. Antifa, first of all, we hear so much how Antifa is weak. Antifa, how would they be able to storm the building? No, this was completely Trump supporters, at least the most fringe. I'm not going to paint all Trump supporters, but the most fringe of Trump supporters definitely did get into that, the Capitol building. There's even tweets from friggin' Andy No, who, but what is it? Where is it? Is it Andy No? Anyway, there's Andy No. I have to find the tweet, but there's no hard proof that Antifa actually was present down there and actually stormed the Capitol building.
So GK Mofo, shout out to GK Mofo. Thanks for engaging in conversation with us on YouTube Live. GK Mofo is saying the individual in the picture of the video, which is it was the guy with he had like I think a Viking hat on. He had patriotic colors, red and blue on his face. He's pretty much our thumbnail for our video. I thought it was a pretty cool picture. He was in the chambers, and GK Mofo is saying this individual was an Antifa member. Yeah, that guy, he supposedly was leaving it. Look it up. No facts. I think they mean we don't have the facts right. Well, I mean, I'm saying then show us the proof. That's all I'll say. Show us the proof, because that was a Trump march and there were Trump people standing on the Capitol stairs. And we see people with red Trump support, great, make America great again. They were shooting the fire extinguisher at people. That's assault, dude. So unless Antifa was trying to disguise themselves and they put themselves in the Capitol with all the other Trump supporters, those Trump supporters cheered it on. They changed the flag.
It just doesn't make sense, because Antifa, they like hiding their face, and these Trump supporters didn't have anything on their face. They like being hidden. They like being anonymous. And what we saw today wasn't Antifa. Here we go. Here, I'm gonna share it really quickly. Hopefully I share the correct screen. And he shared it on himself from the Washington Examiner, expert Andy No. And this guy is hard anti-Antifa. He hates Antifa. Journalist Andy No, who has become an expert on the violent anarchist group Antifa, today dismissed claims by President Trump supporters that the group was behind the pro-Trump riots on Capitol Hill. Here's the article. Go read it. He has more tweets in there. I'm just citing the source. But even he himself has come out and said, it's not Antifa. So I'm tired of those conspiracy theories. If someone's going to say it is Antifa, you have to prove it. I don't have to prove that it wasn't Antifa, because I can't prove a negative. You have to prove that claim. All right, I'm done.
Good one. Good one. That was a good one. Oh, so GK Mofo, let us know if you find any resources. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe. We want to engage in difficult conversation. We are talking about these DC riots and the implications.
He's right. JK Mofo, if you do find it, dude, I will fully change my opinion. I just need to see evidence. I haven't seen anything to the point. But if it's out there, yeah, I'll change it.
Yeah. And so look, we disagree. You called me arguing about semantics. I can throw it right back at you if we want to play that game. What I'm taking is a moral position about the state apparatus having this monopoly on violence, which I can understand why that's necessary, why there needs to be a monopoly on violence. But the point that we're just going to use the same enemy, the same apparatus that is racist, that has oppressed us, brutalized us, murdered us, and then we're going to tell them, yeah, go fuck them up too. That's not a moral or just America. Everyone's moral compass, not everyone. I don't want to accuse you guys. People's moral compass gets thrown out. I want to govern and live in a society that understands with compassion and empathy. And the terrorist word for me is just not swinging. I didn't see the guns. I didn't see the potential to take over or overthrow a government. All I saw was people committing crimes. The fire extinguisher was one of the most notable ones I saw. That's assault, dude. Go ahead, Miguel. You're waving your finger. What else do we got that shows they had the capability to overthrow a government?
Tony, okay, now you're saying the bar way too high. It's not that they have the capability, but that the fact that they're having steps towards it. Okay, now, do you see that semantic trick you played? That's a very semantic trick.
Well, so let's see this then. The Capitol, Edwin was saying that it's an insult. I agree. They stormed the Capitol. That's like the Mecca for U.S. politics. But we're saying that's such sacred ground that U.S. rights are suspended when it comes to assembly, free speech, protest. That the very grounds where our leaders are, the kingdom itself, where they sit on their thrones, that's off limits when it comes to our rights of protest, assembly, and freedom of speech. It sounds that way. So yes, I'm sometimes going to use semantics because the way people sound is you're throwing everything you believe in out the window. You're deciding
not at all.
Morality doesn't matter.
Not at all.
It sounds that way. And if you can defend it, what does it sound like? Is the Capitol Hill not an area where we can protest? I know Edwin said this, but is that not a place?
The Washington Mall, yes, because that's public property. Do you agree with me that even the federal government has private property?
No.
Well, too bad, because that's actually statutorily relevant and it is upheld. You have no legal argument outside.
I have a philosophical and moral argument. Positive law.
Yes, I know you went.
Law.
No, I'm going with legal law here. Legal law. You're confusing what's morally right and what's morally wrong with what's true and false. Is it right that the government has private property? I honestly think yes. The government has secrets that it can withhold, nuclear launch codes, inner workings, obviously not unconstitutional things, but there are some things that the government can and should be able to withhold from the public. Very few things, very, very few things. And then the government also has its private property being the inside of military establishments. Is it okay, Tony, if I go have a free speech rally inside of Fort Benning? Tell me, is that far right?
Outside of Fort Benning, yes.
No, I said inside. You didn't hear me right.
I say outside.
Okay, why not inside?
Because you just pointed everything out clearly. It's very sensitive information, material. It's dangerous. Yeah, all right. I agree with that. That's a good point.
Okay, so the fact that the government has private property, and we respect that, even if you kick the legal law, even if you say legality isn't morality, we want to have private property because it is inherent to humankind. Private property is inherent. Privacy is inherent. Even these buildings, which are very small, we have only very, very few federal buildings within the U.S. You have your, if you want to consider them post office, your courthouses, and then obviously the government buildings within the Capitol. So my point is, legally and morally, yes, it is okay to exclude First Amendment speeches from inside government private property.
Okay, the military was a good argument, but you have made no argument for the Capitol building where the Congress meets.
I'll make that argument. So our Congress people, or our congresspersons often have sensitive information. They discuss sensitive information regarding whatever committee they're in. That could be a threat to our national security if it's just if random people just go in there and take it. But I want to bring it back to something that was said about, private and public property. Again, I think you're simplifying such a complicated issue with this whole like, can we go and storm the Capitol if we think our government is being unjust? If our government is being unjust, and I'm talking about like, concentration camps, and to an extent, we are seeing that. We are seeing that with the detention centers with the kids, and we continue to see this. And again, that itself is such a gray area. Then would I side on the storming the Capitol front, whatever? I would probably agree with you if there was such atrocities committed by the state, and the state was fully behind what is happening, and there was no dissent within the state, then maybe I'd be more like, well, yeah, I'm 100% down. This is not terrorism. This is revolution to stop these atrocities, right? What we saw today was clear terrorism because we saw a group of people trying to harm our democracy by storming into a sensitive area in our country. I'm not Walgreens. It's our nation's capital. And like he mentioned, if we were going into a base, if we were going to try to storm the base, we would probably be faced with way worse things that we saw today, right? If we were trying to storm into our nearest military base, what is a probable outcome? Like it'll probably be worse. But I 100% agree with Miguel's statements on this. This isn't just your typical building. And I'm not saying that they're off limits. I'm 100% behind the idea of a revolution in any sense, right? In any government, and not just the US. But when you simplify it to meaning, yeah, if Medicaid for all was just like people try to say, that's such a simplifying such an issue, because what we see today is a person who has been rallying domestic terrorists, not just one, not a couple, and not just one incident. I'm looking up all the domestic terrorism that has happened in the last, since 2016? Orlando nightclub shooting, it was against the LGBTQ community. The El Paso shooting, it was against what Trump called the invaders. And what did the gentleman use? The term, I was trying to stop the invasion of our country. So then you have the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. It's considered a domestic terrorism because they were trying to kidnap a a governor who was part of the Democratic Party. So it falls into this line of legitimizing our government, and that is what is so important that I feel like you're not understanding, but maybe not accepting that a lot of this is trying to delegitimize our government. And that itself is harmful for our country and harmful to even the term terrorism, right? Because when you delegitimize so many things, then you're not technically attacking the state, so it's not terrorism, right? So then you fall into so many gray areas. And we can go into the philosophies of a lot of these, but I'd rather not. But go ahead, Tony or Miguel.
Look, you guys are making these compelling arguments in terms of accountability. I get it. I'm really just stuck on this idea of labeling people in such a manner. The dangerous implications of it. I still see nothing that proves that they were willingly and intentionally going to overthrow a government or commit serious acts of violence that could lead that direction.
But neither was the 9/11 attack. That was not a sense of trying to destroy, like to take over our government. That was a message.
That's a treasonous part. Yeah, that's a treasonous part. So, but I don't see a takeover. I see these disrupted people that wanted to disrupt. They wanted to delay.
Exactly. That's why I don't consider it a revolution, because they weren't trying to do anything that was long term. I feel like a lot of those people there knew exactly what the outcome was going to be. I think they've all accepted the fact that Joe Biden was going to become our president. The problem with them is that they want to lash out in these moments. So this was a moment for them to lash out, and in that was a terrorist attack. The same way that, the 9/11 attack wasn't a way to start, the new Islamic United States. It was to send a message. And we consider that today a terrorist attack, just because, and both were unsuccessful in terms of the goal, right? Osama bin Laden was clear. He was trying to stop the United States empire or whatever, however he used that wording. you know, they failed. Now the alt-right is trying to keep Trump in office and take Joe Biden off. It doesn't matter if it was a successful operation or not. It's clear that it had a goal behind it. It failed, but that was the goal. And it goes back to the whole terminology when it comes to delegitimizing our government. That's what to me is so important about this, that we can't link it to other other ideas of what we would consider revolution or just trying to overthrow a government. That's why it's terrorism. But Miguel probably has a better answer to this, so I'm gonna let him talk.
No, it's not that I have a better answer. Just quickly, I wouldn't even consider with and this people are gonna hate me. It's not even, I don't even consider with Bin Laden the terrorism. I consider it's blowback, and the CIA has a term for this. It's blowback. It's when you mess around enough in other nations' activities that eventually the U.S. will have blowback. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's just another topic for another day. Tony, you're setting the bar too high for treason. The treason isn't that there's an ability to overthrow the government, because that's not even how the legal system treats sedition
or a
and treason.
willingness.
Okay, all right. So then if we have a willingness, you need, what these people had today was a conspiracy. What you need for a conspiracy is 2 or more people to agree to do a crime. In this case, it's to overthrow the government, and they do steps and they make steps to get to that. They make steps towards the completion of that goal. That crime doesn't actually have to be completed. That's why we have inchoate crimes. We have attempted murder, attempted assault. Those are not real crimes that are committed, but we punish the intent, the attempt. That's what we punish. So by the willingness, by all definitions of a conspiracy, what these Trumpsters did today, by traveling there and then storming the Capitol building, that completely satisfies the meaning of a conspiracy, and it is punishable. It is a conspiracy for sedition. If you don't believe me, here's the statute.
I believe you in what you're saying. Yeah, go ahead, put the statute up.
Here's a statute for seditious conspiracy. And conspiracy is it's free speech, or it's speech that incites to overthrow government. And it reads, if 2 or more persons in any state or territory or any subject or any place subject to the United States conspires to overthrow, so you need 2 people, and they have a conspiracy to overthrow the government, and then the conspiracy requires something on top of that. So if you and I, Tony, were just talking right now, hey, let's go overthrow the government, but we don't do anything, that's not a conspiracy. The conspiracy part here is actually attacking the Capitol building, is actually making moves against the Capitol building. That's what completes the seditious conspiracy here. Okay, that's what makes the attempt. That willingness, that's all met. All of that.
You're assuming the intentions here based on a woman who said we were trying to have a revolution. I mean,
Tony, Tony, I am not assuming that she said it. Those are her statements. I went in there to a revolution.
Right. So this individual represents an entirety. That's what you're saying. You're making that assumption based on that
I never said
argument.
That. I said the people
That's your only evidence. That's your only evidence. This will not stand in court. And
what wouldn't stand in court? Her statement?
They conspired to overthrow. There's a conspiracy of 2 people to put down or destroy by force the government of the United States, levy war against them, or oppose by force authority thereof, by force to prevent, hinder, delay the execution of any law. That's more key. Delay the execution of any law. You didn't even read that part.
Tony, and you know I never said that all of them should have been charged with. I only want accountability for the people who entered.
Let's play a game, because you guys are kicking my ass right now.
Hold on, Tony. And that's not the only charge you can pin on everyone. There's also rebellion and insurrection. There's advocating. I can't show you these 3 tabs because those are behind the paywall, and if I show those, I'll get in trouble. But this is a code for trespassing on restricted building or grounds. Whoever knowingly enters or remains in the restricted building or grounds without lawful authority to do so. And it goes on. It talks about what places are off limits. Anyway, the way I know what you're trying to say here is that we can never know the full intent of someone. So we can't say with 100% certainty that these people wanted to overthrow the government. I think that's what you're trying to say, correct?
Yes. And here's the thing. I don't want to vilify to the extent where you use the full force of the law to give people 10 to 25 years in prison. I don't want that. And so I'm going to play a game with both of you guys. Because a lot of what you said, it sounds like the BLM protesters did the same thing. Not all of them, but enough of them conspired to instill fear and use violence against the American people. Would you agree that the same laws or some of the laws should be used at full force against BLM? Were they conspiring? Tell me, because they attacked police. They burned down federal buildings. They burned down private businesses. And you say no based on the ideology. That's what I'm saying. Everyone on social media is making this argument because it's their side.
No, I think that there's a clear difference, man. Like when you have a group of people that are rallied behind this concept of Black people should not be murdered by police officers, that's the messaging behind BLM, right? Where
I empathize. Once again, I empathize.
Today, what we saw today was Donald Trump should be the leader, not Joe Biden. And Trump.
The election was stolen.
Trump won the election.
The election was stolen.
Tony, now you're saying that claim as if it has any merit to it. How many court cases? And we went over this. You and I went over this already. How many court cases did not just the Trump administration, but also within the states, actually go to the federal courts trying to overturn the results of those federal states, of those states, not federal states, but of those states, the election results? It's well over 4 dozen, and all of them have failed. Trump hasn't won any of them. So the election wasn't stolen. If they can't even prove it in a court of law.
To them, it was stolen, and they believe it. Even though the courts shut them out, they believe this shit, man. And that's the problem.
That's fine. And again, and I think you'll agree with me here. They are confusing what's right and wrong for them. This was stolen. What they're doing is right with what's true and false. What they're doing is false because they're going against the democratic process.
I agree, but they feel just in their behavior, just as the BLM protesters and other left groups felt just in their behavior.
Right.
The ends don't justify the means. I don't agree with the stuff, but they both feel justified. And if you can only empathize with one side, then that's the moral failing of the whole conversation.
I don't agree.
But Tony, I told you already that I want accountability. If someone is throwing a rock,
I want that too.
I did too. So I'm not. I am not empathizing.
Damage.
I am not empathizing with either side. What I'm saying is go ahead and if you're going to protest. But if you're going to cross the line and have property damage, assault, arson, you have to be held accountable.
We cannot with good conscience compare the stealing of a Gucci bag, the robbing of a Louis Vuitton belt, the going into a Walgreens and grabbing, I don't know, a air fryer, right? To that of storming the nation's capital. No, and this is all right. Those are, again, we go into it, right? Because Tony wants us to go into like, well, that you can't justify the actions of one person for the whole group. That's also a small group of BLM, right? Where those people don't define BLM. What does define this movement is that people were rallied around it. Once people went in, you didn't see people like, whoa, we're not part of that group. Like, because I was at BLM rallies, right? And then I saw some behavior that I was not about, so I separated myself. What we really saw was just, hell yeah, let's go in, let's keep doing this, right? It was a moment of pride. It was a moment of looking at the camera and being like, hell yeah. We can't correlate these two in that same extent. And Tony, I feel you again. I feel that connection you're trying to make, but I don't see it. I don't think it's there because again, it's fueled by I don't even know how to say it anymore, man. It's just like, yes, if we break it down to its simplest forms, you can correlate the two, but we can in good conscience try to connect the two situations, the one that's a global event, one that's been a global movement to try to end something where one is trying to replace a leader of our country. I don't know. Again, I'm getting lost in my own thinking, right? Because again, I'm challenging myself. When Tony says this shit, I'm not saying Tony is wrong all the time. I'm trying to look at it through your eyes, Tony. Again, Miguel too. Anything you say, I'm trying to look at it through your perspective. I'm like, oh, all right, playing with those thoughts, which is a big problem, right, in our country as a whole. But I can't be put in your shoes, Tony, and be like, yeah, to an extent, you know, we have to defend both groups to a level, right? I can't do that. I can't do that. Why? Because maybe it's my ideology getting in the way, but maybe it's the fact. Maybe it's the, again, it's a simplification of the issues, right? You're grabbing it simplest form, and when you grab that simplest form, yeah, there's that clear correlation. But there's so many external factors, and when you avoid those external factors, you delegitimize both movements and both situations, right? Yeah, I don't know. Can you give me an example of terrorism that you think, Tony? Maybe that's a good question for you, and maybe Miguel too. Just what you all see as terrorism, or an event in terrorism, because now I'm questioning myself what terrorism is. So
Yeah. I think you defined it pretty well in the terms of the instilling fear using violence and having a political objective. That in itself is a very broad definition of terrorism. Scholars, they try to become more narrow. They include religion in there. But your broad definition works for me, right? People were afraid during the BLM protests, and they were easy to call Black Lives Matter terrorists, and that was dangerous. I didn't agree with it. Don't call them terrorists. Yes, they're messing up. Stealing someone's property, even if it's a rich person's, while I don't really care too much, the moral principle still matters. You are taking something from someone, and therefore you are depriving them of the means they use to have a life. You're depriving their livelihood, right? Property, I'm not trying to put property over human life. That's stupid. I think human life is over property. But the reason why I'm so adamant about this, what we can do is play an exercise again. And I love hypotheticals, and I know not many people are, but Black Lives Matter were protesting police brutality, right? Police were murdering people of color. Actually, they're murdering Americans more often, people of color, Black and brown people, right? Isn't that a justification to storm the Capitol and demand that the fascist leader, Donald Trump, be taken down? I mean, people, that's a radical idea, but people can get with that shit because, yes, the state is murdering people.
But that's a state issue, Tony. How would overthrowing Trump take care of a state issue? These are local police departments.
Trump is an advocate for all the police across law and order, right? So
now you're doing guilt by association.
No.
Not all police are advocates of Trump, and that's where there's a big difference. And not all local governors that govern over the municipal police or whatever are advocates of Donald Trump, right? So there is those are the technicalities you should look at, right? When you try to simplify it and say, you know, the police and I get that, but I think there's far more police officers that are kind of like, whoa, well, yeah. This is kind of a weird situation I'm in, where I agree with Trump's philosophy. I believe in protecting police, but there is some accountability issues that we're dealing with. I don't know. You're opening up a lot of can of worms, Tony.
Well, look. This is where I'm trying to get to. Miguel's right. It's a state issue. However, when it comes to accountability, oftentimes those in leadership aren't accountable. The federal government is the ultimate leadership, and they've allowed this shit to go on left and right. So they're accountable still. Would BLM not have the right to storm the Capitol because their people are being allowed to be murdered? Wouldn't it be wise to overthrow a neo-fascist leader who allows, not just him, Obama, George Bush, Clinton? Wouldn't it be wise that they have some justification, right? So I think that's where I'm at. Edwin, Miguel, I want to have these conversations a lot more often because you guys fucking bringing me down to earth. I get it. I get why the outrage against white supremacists needs to be taken seriously and they need to be held accountable. They've gotten away with too much for too long. I just don't want to use the same forces that have been oppressing my brothers and sisters. I just don't want that. I think the moral implications are dangerous. But I really appreciate Edwin. I want to leave you with some final words because I believe you have to go. So just give
go ahead.
us, yeah.
I mean, thank you for having me. First of all, Tony, I'm a big fan of the show. I'm a big fan of Existentialists, and I'm a big fan of supporting, my community. And I mean, yeah, my final thoughts on this, it's gonna leave a stain on us. I don't look. I'm trying to keep up with the news. I'm trying to listen to NPR and just see whatever's going on TV to see exactly what people are saying. I think that I'm really interested in how these next 15, 14 days go. What Biden takes office on the 20th, I'm probably going to be paying attention every step of the way because we're living in unpredictable times. I don't know what's going to happen, but I am cautious. I am cautious because Trump might be going to jail. And if I was him, I would not want to go to jail. So he's going to do whatever he can to protect himself. But I am a fan of these conversations. I'm a fan of looking at politics at a deeper level, right? You mentioned blowback, and hopefully you're mentioning the book by Chalmers Johnson. Maybe you're not.
The CIA has a term. It's called blowback. Let me check. Blowback, right? Who's the book by?
So
You're right.
My senior thesis was on the radicalization of the Islamic community. So it's awesome that you mentioned that because I'm a big fan of talking about those topics. The spirit of terrorism, all those are interesting concepts, right? To dive into, right? Because we want to see who's at fault in some of these situations, and oftentimes we're not really happy with the answer, right? But no, that's awesome that these conversations are being had. But most importantly, I am excited to see what conversations are going to be had in the next coming years, especially with a fully blue Senate. And Joe Manchin, is that how you pronounce his name, is going to be probably one of the most powerful senators in U.S. Senate. Congress, lost a lot of people, but they still have the small majority in terms of the Democrats, and we have a blue president. So I'm interested in seeing how we recover COVID, all these other things, to see how we respond to it, and hopefully I'm back on soon. So. Yeah, that's it.
Great to have you.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye.
All right, Edwin. Thanks again.
So on the interesting note, I think shit's actually going to hit the fan even. There's a possibility that the shit will hit the fan once Biden takes over. If these protests and the mega cult doesn't calm down, I can definitely see Biden taking some power that he shouldn't to quell some of those. And I am worried. And it's not just because it's a blue Senate, House, and executive. I really am worried what can happen in the next few years.
Yeah. I really appreciate that we can have these conversations without killing each other. It's really fun. I know it's serious, but I enjoy the logic that you bring to the table, even Edwin's perspective. That's why we had him on. I just want people to know that we don't have to be so polarized in this country.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a light in dark times. There has to be a beacon. And, the very few of us, I will not be dictated by the mob. You neither. You think for yourself. I think you affirm your beliefs very well with facts and great logic exercises.
Stop it. You do that, Tony. You do that, you sexy man.
I encourage listeners and people on social media, challenge yourselves, engage in the conversation then. People want to write off my side because I'm very few at this point. A lot of people are of the majority of your opinion. This was an act of terror. This was a coup d'etat. No one says treason, but you're right. By definition, this is better treasonous than
terrorism.
What is it? Terrorism, right? Yeah. But even then, like, the majority would side with you. I can't fall in line knowing that the implications are so dangerous for our country. I think we could do better.
This is where I really should have framed the question, because how do you treat these people? Well, it depends. It really does depend. The people who just entered the Capitol building and trespassed, you can get them on trespass. The people who broke those windows, you can you can charge them with property damage to federal buildings. The people who took down the American flag and raised the MAGA flag, you can probably make the case that that's treasonous, right? So it's not that, and we made this point very well. We talked about it. All of BLM, they're not all terrorists, they're not all treasonous, but the ones that do property damage or do battery, those should be held accountable. They should be held accountable. And same thing with the MAGA cult that was out there. The ones who were there just to protest and did leave, the ones who did not storm the Capitol, they are not treasonous. They're not terrorists. Just the ones that got in. And even not everyone, like I said, not everyone that got in necessarily would meet necessarily all of the treasonous requirements. Like I'm saying, they're either just trespassing, property damage. So you do need all that extra element. Like that lady, if she drove there with someone and she stormed that Capitol, that is very seditious. That's seditious conspiracy to me. I see that conspiracy with her. Her statement would easily hold up in a court of law, and she would get 20 years. And honestly, at that point, if she has her due process, she has her day in court, and she's charged in federal prison and convicted to a federal prison, I would be okay with that.
Yeah. I have to admit, something about knowing that some of these right-wing grassroots leaders, like those that have social media platforms, they organize these things. Those leaders, part of me is like, I want them to be held accountable the most, because they know what they're doing. I think a lot of them know how to manipulate people. The leaders, for me, some part of me is like, I hope the leaders get it. But yeah, I want to continue this throughout the Biden administration, like Edwin said, and we should see where this goes. Maybe they do nothing, which would be a slap to the face if they do nothing. But I also want police leadership to be held accountable. Why was there a failed response today? Someone in the police needs to be held accountable for that. That's like, for me, that's the hierarchy. Police accountability for allowing that shit to happen. Someone said it on Facebook, the police probably let these motherfuckers in. Now, there is footage that the police clashed with the rioters on breaking the fence. So I don't think that's true. But hey, man, where was the response? Someone needs to be held accountable.
Let me share this really quickly. DC police selfies with protesters.
Selfies. We got selfies, everyone.
Here, this is just an hour ago. Unfortunately, this is from Australia, but I mean, we're the laughing stock of the world at the moment, and that's fine. Vision emerges of police moving barricades to allow rioters into the U.S. Capitol and taking selfies. Oh God, this gets worse. Vision has emerged of police at the U.S. Capitol appearing to remove barricades to allow pro-Trump protesters to gain access to the building, and another officer posing for a selfie. Now, that was just one officer, all right? So one officer.
We got footage of that?
Let me see if...
Y mejor es lo que nos impulsa.
Commercial.
I know, hold on, sorry.
Police are squabbling with protesters.
I did see this.
Oh, there we go.
I did see this video on TikTok. Oh God. Oh, Marcus, yeah. Okay.
And they just breached the Capitol again.
These few officers really need to be held accountable. Just you can't.
It was really broken up. Is there any chance you could play it again?
Yeah.
Really hard to see. Let's try to zoom in on there, because there was reports that there were clashes by the fence, the barricade.
Yes, I mean, so it's correct. There wasn't 100% leniency with the protesters, but there also wasn't 100% lockdown with the protesters. Like I'm saying, it appears some police officers let them through and others didn't. So it's all over the place.
Protesters!
Okay.
Police are squabbling with protesters. Oh, there we go. And they just breached the Capitol again.
Okay, so at that moment, because once again, on my end, it's very broken up, pixelated. It's too distant. The moment they say "there you go," are the police removing the barricades?
The police have removed the barricades at that point.
What? So the protesters didn't even break them down?
Correct.
Oh
Mind you, again,
my-
that's not all the police officers. Like you're saying, there's pockets where there was
Yeah.
resistance. And here's a photo of a DC police officer taking a selfie with a protester inside. At this point, not even protester, it's a trespasser. A trespasser. So this was a complete breakdown today, Tony, unfortunately.
Damn.
Wait, what happened to GQ or JK Mofo? He
Yeah,
retracted all
JK
his...
Mofo come back. He retracted all his comments. What a shame.
See, I'm telling
we're
you, it
willing to
wasn't
engage with
Antifa.
people.
No, I'm willing to engage with intellectually honest people who, when they make claims, they'll back it up with evidence.
Yeah, and GK Mofo said that he or she had the evidence and they retracted all their statements. So that's disappointing. I was excited to see them lose in an argument against you. All right, well,
Not a game. It's not a. There's no prize for winning or losing, man.
hey, bro, ego matters. Kanye taught us anything, we got to
It
have a
doesn't.
big ego.
So it's a very dark day today, and I think in our American history, I think a sort of Rubicon was crossed by some of our citizens, and I don't know how we recover from this, but we have to. We do have to do something to move on from what happened today. And do I think Joe Biden is the person? Probably not. So it's going to get bumpy. What do you have to say, Tony? Please lead us out. I'm sure you want to do something else than talk to me all day.
Definitely. I love having these conversations. And once again, I encourage all people to reach across the aisle with those you disagree with politically and be prepared to put in the labor of trying to understand and have others understand you. It's not easy, but these kind of conversations are needed. We engage here at the Existentialists with an open mind, calling out all sides. It's not easy for me to defend those that I easily disagree with, but I'll stand on what I believe to be broken principles to some. I'll believe, as Miguel, that we should engage in the difficulties because that's what matters. That's how we move forward, in my opinion. We talk about it and we try not to vilify as easy as it can be because it's obvious. The state is messed up, man. The state, the government with these right-wing groups, it's crazy, the hypocrisy on how they responded. So I get people's anger. We should be mad, but that just means we need drastic police reform based on what we saw today, and we need drastic accountability. And right-wing terrorists should not be allowed to get away with atrocious behaviors. It's disgusting. I'm not going to call people terrorists, but terrorism is real on the right and the left. A lot of it's been from the right. That needs to be dealt with appropriately. It can't be ignored because now that has been ignored so long, they're all terrorists. Great job for us, the people and the government, for trying to make people feel safe because now we don't. So let's continue this conversation online. Follow us on Twitter at @DExistentialist. That's a capital D, Existentialist. Like us on Facebook, comment, share. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. Miguel, I love you, bro. Let's do this again.
Thank you, Tony.